Welcome to this very special fourth episode of Eastern World 2009 Recapture Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Armstrong, and joining me as always is the Canadian who is fun to have on the team, even if he doesn't always understand the show, Logan Saunders.
Good afternoon.
And the guy who loves to tell us when he spends the night with lovely people with warm butts, David Bindley.
It's not that special, but good morning.
It is that special because, as you guys well know, the day that this episode comes out is actually a birthday.
Oh,
It's Logan's birthday, assuming I've done my maths right. So happy birthday, Logan.
Oh, in 4 months from now, yeah, it's what the year went by fast, I guess.
I realised this as I was talking to Bindles after we finished episode 3. I'm like, well, we're recording episode 4 on my birthday next Monday, and if I release it when I think I'm going to, it'll actually end up being Logan's birthday. So it's my birthday as we record, and it's Logan's birthday when we release.
Double birthday, 4 months apart.
those are the two birthdays that don't count.
Yeah, pretty much. And that will be the only birthday chat we have because we're recording the Belkia premiere tomorrow. Lots of birthday chat tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful.
Good weeks?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good.
I don't know whether to tell my story for this episode or save it for tomorrow.
Save it for tomorrow, I think.
Okay.
The Belkia premiere is always a long one. We know it is. Why do you think I'm off work this week?
Well, because you're lazy.
Well, yeah, because I'm lazy. Weirdly, my mum did say to me as I was leaving earlier, "Oh, why didn't you do something with this week?" And I'm sat there thinking, well, I am doing something, but if I say I haven't gone anywhere deliberately because I know there's going to be a long podcast edit to do this week, I think she might have some words with me about my life choices. So I just didn't mention it.
That's okay. We'll have words later.
Good week, Saunders?
Yeah.
Good, glad.
A bit uneventful in contrast to being in New Orleans, but yeah, just podcasted with Justin from Racers Recap yesterday, and yeah, not a whole lot else going on.
I'm sure we'll discuss that tomorrow as well.
Have they run out of races to recap?
Evidently they have. Some vid of 2009, previously the 9 remaining famous faces, all continued through to episode 3 as they divided into pairs for a treasure hunt around Belfast. Nobody could work a payphone except for John, leaving the group penniless once more. At a confusing theatre challenge, nobody searched Dennis's bag for the money, while they all had a smashing time actually earning money in a scrapyard. At the execution, Hans became the second person to go home, but he went home with a surprise souvenir, Frauke's mole book, courtesy of Sebastiaan. And they are now in Portrush. Pieter Jan says the group hasn't been doing very well. They failed 2 of the previous 3 assignments, and it was only the third one that they won and essentially doubled the pot with. Hans had to leave, but some new friendships are blossoming, which will be tested.
I love that he's like, they're finally winning money and becoming friends. This cannot stand. But he doesn't even know what's about to happen in this episode yet.
This is unacceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
There must be discontent within the group, or so help Pieter Jan.
And you know how we mentioned a few weeks ago about how they didn't end up going to the Giant's Causeway, basically the most famous non-Belfast thing in Northern Ireland?
Yep.
Portrush is 15 minutes from the Giant's Causeway, and they still didn't go there. Because I actually looked up the distance from Carrick-a-Rede, which I've been to, and I thought that was right near the Giant's Causeway. It's about 40 minutes away, but yeah, Portrush is about 15.
Oh, wow.
It's just along the coast. Carrick-a-Rede is a little bit further east of that.
So that's how you say it.
Yeah. They do actually say it correctly, which is very rare in Vidum with anything sort of English language, but yeah, it's Carrick-a-Rede.
Huh.
So it's day 6 and actually sunny in Northern Ireland for once. Annick says that she felt bad for Hans having to leave. He was fun to have on the team even if he didn't always understand the show. And Dennis said he was a really cool mole player.
I know it's not the point, but I love how, like, throughout this entire episode, Annick's confessionals are done in, like, a full Dracula costume. And, like, fair enough, this episode wants to suck and really does suck quite a lot. But I don't know, I think that's a little bit too on the nose.
I do think it's interesting that basically all the eulogies seem to be not at the end of the episode in this season, but at the start of the next one.
We really needed to mourn the loss of Hans.
Yeah, because we didn't really need to mourn the loss of Vera at the start of episode 2, but she was still mentioned.
Yeah.
And it was great to see the opening shot of a herd of sheep that were all free of bird flu.
Well, you know, we're done with all the Titanic stuff, so now it's all hands on deck.
Lucky deck. So they are driven in their big yellow bus to Carrick-a-Rede Bridge, a stone's throw from the Giant's Causeway, and Paula volunteers to be the first one to cross. Pieter Jan tells her to write down the name of the person who she thinks is getting the next red screen, and if she is correct, it will earn €250 for the pot. Whoever is mentioned the most by the group will get a min pass frog for this test, regardless of whether they go home or not. And she picks Anik as her choice.
You know, Anik, the person who intentionally failed a quiz just to trigger a group exemption. That strikes me as somebody who really doesn't know who the mole is somebody who knowingly failed a quiz on purpose. Come on, Paula.
But she doesn't know that, not yet, not till she goes home at the end of this episode.
It's just funny how, like, Frauke gives us a confessional at the start of the thing about how Northern Ireland actually isn't a shithole, so suck at whiners. And I'm like, how has it taken 4 episodes for them to not hate this place enough to do that?
I was thinking that because I do love Northern Ireland.
Yeah, like, it seems gorgeous, but not the most exciting location to visit.
Papa Bear always tells the story about when they flew to Greece in Belgium, that I think they ended up alluding to who it was, and it was Bart. But he said before the start of the season that someone flew to Greece and was really disappointed because they weren't changing planes again. And I feel like Northern Ireland is another one of those mole locations where they were probably flown from Schiphol to Belfast and they thought, oh, we must be changing planes here to go on to America or something. And then they don't. And I just have a sense that maybe they were a little bit disappointed that they weren't going that far afield.
Yeah. And I love that, you know, if that happened, once they got to Belfast, they basically drove 20 minutes out of town to go to that little mansion, sat there for 20 minutes, and then drove straight back to Belfast for, you know, near enough a week, and pretty much just had a really fun time exploring 2 warehouses.
Yeah, because Belfast Airport is not a large one either. That's the other thing. It's not a tiny airport, but it's certainly not the airport that you would choose to go to in the UK. And as we found out in the last week, maybe Heathrow isn't either.
Topical.
Yeah, I'm assuming that it actually made your news that what happened at Heathrow.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
I thought my bird flu reference with the sheep was a bit much.
And just while we're on, you know, topical news stories, Logan did not have sexual relations with those sheep.
That we know of.
Of his life so far.
Anik is the next to leave the bus, and she chooses Frauke as she lost her mole book and doesn't seem to write things down even when she had it. And we then cut to Port Ballantoy Harbour for the first challenge proper. Pieter Jan tells them that a few chests washed up last night, and they've got 30 minutes to unlock them and find out what's in them. The keys are not allowed to leave the keyring, and Rick volunteers to be the keymaster. And the chests are also not allowed to be moved, and there are 17 of them.
And one of the chests washed up from Greece.
It did. And it contains all the evil in the world.
I'm just fascinated by, like, how this episode basically has nothing going on, and yet the key part of this challenge, which seems like there's sort of at least something happening, they just don't bother showing most of it.
The key part of this challenge?
Yeah. Like, I get, you know, the pot train coming up is probably the more exciting bit, but it feels like the key part is the actual challenge part of the challenge, and it's just odd that they're not showing it in an episode where they can't really show anything interesting with the vote. And even, like, the pinball challenge, you know, it's one person, one at a time, and by the time you get through 3 or 4 people, you realise what's going on. It's not that interesting. You know, I think they probably needed to stretch this out a little bit more.
Paula says this almost immediately in this challenge. It's like, well, nobody's doing anything who isn't one of the keymasters. There's like 6 people here who are doing nothing at all. And that's bad challenge design.
Yeah. They probably should have given, like, everybody a keyring with a whole bunch of keys and just have, like, one key on one of the keyrings open each chest, and then that would be it.
Yeah.
It is odd that it's just a bunch of people standing around for the majority of the challenge, waiting to be able to use a key.
Yeah, because eventually they do get bonus keys, and that's when it becomes more interesting. But actually, in terms of the starting setup of this challenge, there's only really 2 people who matter. Maybe even 1. Maybe it's just Rick to begin with.
Yeah.
And if you're hinging an entire challenge on Rick being interesting, that's not necessarily great.
I did like that it sort of starts with Dennis saying, oh, we've only got 17 chests, so there's plenty of time. And then you've got John stopping to yell at Rick for wasting time. And then the rest of the challenge, John is basically just pushing people over on the rocks.
Yeah, when Rick and Mr. Bean were wrestling over that one key, they were really close to both losing their balance and just completely bailing onto the rocks and getting seriously hurt.
It was very Survivor Heroes versus Villains Treasure Island fight.
Like, I was waiting for one of them to, like, put their hand on somebody else's forehead to stop them from being able to move anymore.
You were not in the attack zone when you took the keys.
Another penalty. Another chest for her Chewie gone. Come on, guys. I sound like a broken record.
Is there anything you want to discuss in this challenge other than the weird fight between Rick and John?
Absolutely not.
I have Mr. Bean is stumbling around. Oh, we are already down to 2 minutes. Time is up. Rick says John, Anik, and Paula were the most suspicious because they did nothing. Sebastiaan and Vivian found 4,250 euros together. Altogether, 7,000 euros were found. End of notes for that challenge.
I'm working on the assumption the max for this challenge was probably 7.5, by the way. Because they had one chest unopened, and I mean, most of them seemed to contain about 500 euros, didn't they? So,
yeah.
Like, it's even tough to say, like, who molded this challenge given the extreme limitations and the fact that they opened all the chests anyway, with only one chest missing, with most people not really having anything to do, and there's no real strategy to implement. Like, I don't even know how you screw this challenge up, really.
I think this challenge was basically a freebie, knowing that the pot drain was going to be coming next.
Which pot drain?
Exactly.
Which of the 3 pot drains?
The pot drain they were planning on. Because, I mean, I don't know whether you really want to answer this question, Bindles. I can't remember whether the mole is responsible for that money going missing. I'm presuming they are.
I can't remember. I didn't even remember it happened.
No, neither did I. That's the worrying thing. I'm working on the assumption the mole probably did that, given that they didn't really spend that much money in the auction and they wanted to take advantage, but...
Is the mystery ever solved in the season?
I can't remember, that's the problem. Neither of us remember it even happening, so...
But the money doesn't come back, right? It just disappears?
I presume so, yeah.
Yeah, like, I remember, which challenges are good, which ones are bad, but the problem is because this isn't a challenge scene, it just, completely just faded from my memory.
Yeah. The time runs out with just one chest left unopened. They get 7 grand, 4,250 of that was Sebastiaan and Vivian. And then we cut back to the bridge, and the most interesting bit of the episode for me is Sebastiaan writing down Paula's name, because he has weird A's.
That's exactly the thing that I wrote.
He draws his A's like they're delta symbols.
Yeah.
It confused me.
Well, luckily he doesn't have any A's in his name.
So back in the harbour, Pieter Jan then tells them they have the opportunity to spend the money that they've just earned, beginning with a bid on 8 tents, 8 airbeds, mosquito repellent, and beer. And he starts the bidding at 3,000 euros. He then drops to 2,300, then 2,000, and the final offer ends up being 1,250 euros, which they refuse. I know that this was probably filmed in summer, but I'm not sure you need that much mosquito repellent in Northern Ireland.
No. I think the mosquito repellent was sort of a little bit of a distraction, like the guitar and the toilet paper. Like, you're not going to use rolls and rolls of toilet paper for one night in a field.
Yeah. The second offer is then 4 tents and 8 sleeping bags for 2,500 euros. He drops to 1,800 and then 1,100, and it ends up being a 4-4 split, so they refuse again.
When I was writing out the notes and just seeing, like, how little commentary I added to my notes, it reminds me of my one friend from one of my best friends from university, where before she wrote for the university paper, or when she started writing for the university paper, she had to write for the sports section, and she would always tell people about how when she wrote for the sports section that all you really do is just write what happened in the game. That's all you do, is just say who scored how many points and what the final score was. That's what it feels like with almost this entire episode. It's just,
yeah,
Pieter Jan says 1,800 euros, goes down to 1,100 euros. Some people agree, some people disagree. They move on to the next package.
It's very much an episode with a lot of, not necessarily filler, but it's one of the episodes where I think they just sort of don't have challenges that allow the group to be entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, the biggest moment we get in this challenge is just Dennis walking away briefly, but he doesn't really walk away. It's more of just oh, I'm frustrated. Oh, now I'm going to come back and discuss it some more. Like, it's not even that noteworthy of a meltdown, but they make it into, oh, Dennis was really upset, but he only walks away for like half a second and then comes back to the conversation. And that's the most emotion we get out of this whole challenge.
And their final chance to bid, at least in this section, is on 3/10 a bottle of whiskey, 2 torches, 3 sleeping bags, a guitar, and some toilet paper for €2,000. Can I also point out that is probably better than most of the places Logan stayed on his trips. Pieter Jan then drops it to 1900, 1800, 1700, 1600, and 1500, at which point they finally agree, and because it's a bad deal, all of them are then sent home.
Speaking of the tents and all, and my brother's been throwing around this idea of going on a big extended family camping trip during the summer. Well, not really camping, but like rent a house or rent a big house, or maybe have a few cabins and bring some tents for people who don't want to spend as much on the individual bedrooms there. Find a house on the lake. And I said, yeah, I might be up for it. I wouldn't stay in a tent though. And then he made then he said, you've been to all these places around the world, yet you've never camped out in the tent once. I'm like, yeah, I guess it's just the one thing I haven't done while traveling is just, camp in a tent.
This will absolutely not shock you, but I've only camped once, and I hated every second of it.
No way.
Michelle meme?
Given my love of decent hotels, not necessarily nice hotels, it's not the one we stayed in San Francisco level that I always go for, but given my love of decent hotels, yeah, I don't enjoy camping. I don't enjoy tents. I just don't see the point, I'll be honest.
I haven't done it since I was a kid, and I'm not looking forward to doing it ever again.
Yeah. Even when I did it, it was forced through school because they did this year 9 camp thing that we all had to stay in big tents and be around each other.
Yeah, I even skipped my school camping trips in elementary school, and I think I've only stayed in a tent 1 or 2 nights ever for a family reunion when I was 12 or 13 years old, and that's been it.
So we then see Vivienne select her name for who she thinks getting the red screen. She picks Sebastiaan with all his deltas. The bidding returns, but for Rick and Sebastian's luggage that was left behind in Belfast, Pieter Jan starts at 2,000 and then drops to €1,000, but they still reject. The next two are then Dennis and Vivienne, but they reject again, and that means they spent €1,500 for a total of minus €1,500 of 0 for the challenge.
Yay, I love pot drains when there's no way to earn money.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite when I say this, but I don't mind this one as much because it's episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, given what we've seen at the start of this episode, they are very much in the era of chucking money at them. Like, €7,000 gain is nearly the entire pot of most of the Vidum seasons we've covered live.
Yeah, I guess it's still a gain of 5,500 for this combined challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the background, production is whispering to each other, they were supposed to spend more money on this. Quick, we got to come up with something.
I don't mind them spending money if they're going to get something for it, which I think, like buying the clothes back, buying, the camping gear, that's fine. It's when the challenge is basically, if you don't do it perfectly, we're taking away half the pot. That's when it's an issue.
Yeah. See, Cambodia.
Hmm.
So Dennis's vote was for Vivienne, thinking that Frauke and Ike would also vote for her. And in the afternoon, they find their camping supplies waiting for them by the field they're camping in, and it is just as bleak as you would expect it to be.
Yeah. I love that there's nothing else going on in this episode, so we get a very, very lengthy confessional from Anique about how she only likes to camp in luxury in the south of France.
Yeah. And Frauke also saying she's camped a bit, and every time she does, she wonders why she's done it.
Yeah. And, I get, they're celebrities and all that sort of stuff. But basically, every season of Vidum up to this point had camping as part of a challenge, so I don't know why she didn't seem to expect this.
Yeah, it's still as routine as laser game, luggage challenge, camping challenge.
Yeah, although I think after what happens in the suicide forest in Japan next season, I think that's sort of when they stop doing the camping.
That's when they really held back.
Yeah, well, there's none in El Salvador, Nicaragua.
Because it'd be too dangerous as a literal war zone.
Yeah. And then,
Back then.
obviously, it's too cold in Iceland, and there's no reason to do it in Spain.
Hong Kong had the Survivor Island.
They do the Survivor Challenge, and they do there's one challenge in South Africa where they like have like luxury tents as sort of part of the setup for like a campfire challenge. But I think those are the last two times they camp. But it's sort of weird that we go from once a season every season, especially with Mexico before this. Basically, the first 3 episodes pretty much just being a long camping trip to nothing.
Oregon had the Oregon Trail, right? That would count.
Yeah,
you're right, but that was at least thematic. They don't really do the luggage challenge anymore after Horace in El Salvador, Nicaragua. I don't think they've done one since.
Horace from New York City.
Yeah, Horace Cohen, family name Horace Cohen, New York City, Netherlands, USA. So Pieter Jan then meets them at a field and welcomes them to the annual Stanley's Field pinball competition, because that's definitely a thing.
Yeah, I hear next year a field-sized pinball machine is just going to be a technical bag.
Logan will not get that joke.
Nope.
They will each play on the giant pinball made of hay bales and must bet money from the pot. At the bottom are multipliers for their bets from 5 times to -5 times. They can also move 1 hay bale per round. They can only bet multiples of €50 up to €200. Frauke is the first to try with €100 and it lands in the absolutely no change box after hitting one of the hay bales. Annick's second with €100 and again it lands in that same box. It was very confusing that they described it as a 0-1. That just says to me that they should have lost their bet, but they don't. It's just basically 1 times.
Yeah. I think there is a 1 times box, isn't there?
Yeah, that's the thing, because the way they interpret it is you gain your bet if it lands in the 1 times one, but you just get your bet back and you earn nothing if it's in the 0 box. But if you're wagering money from the pot, surely it should be 1 times for getting your money back and 2 times for gaining €500 in total.
Yeah. Weird.
To me, at least. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Paula's then third with €100 as well, but she lands in the -5 times box. Well done, Paula.
God, how on brand for her.
Dennis then remembers the other rule, which is you can move hay bales, and moves a hay bale, and then Sebastiaan banks €200 into the -5 times box again.
I think my favourite bit of this challenge happens around here, where like Paula suggests rolling the ball up the hill to get it into the baskets.
It's just such a terrible performance from everyone involved. Because this challenge was absolutely not meant to be a bigger pot drain than the auction challenge, but it ends up being a huge pot drain.
So we just lost €1,000 throwing it to the left. How about we throw it in the exact same spot as we just did? Yeah, it sounds like a good idea, guys.
It's so dumb. I love it.
And then Sebastiaan said, Dennis and I were ignored. Well, we did cost the group €1,000 each because we really wanted to roll it the same way that made us lose €500 just a few minutes earlier. And some of these rolls took forever to watch on screen.
Yeah. Some of these rolls went halfway back to Belfast.
It's a long hill. I don't think they thought about how big that hill actually was to do this challenge on. It's a very impressive setup, but God, some of those rolls take a while.
Yeah, like if I was a contestant, I would think that's a really fun challenge, trying to figure out the physics of it for each roll and just hang out there. How often do you get to roll a gigantic pinball down down a hill, right? But for in terms of just the editing on TV, they could have condensed some of the actual rolling movement, because I think it was Mr. Bean who had a proper throw where it actually rolled down the hill at a speed you would expect going down a hill, as opposed to like Dennis or Sebastiaan's throws, which just it's like there was something, it was like rolling through mud with how slow it was going.
How do you think the mole could have sabotaged this challenge, Saunders?
I guess just throw in confusion to the conversation and just make everybody keep throwing in the wrong direction, which is essentially what happened, is that they were discussing too much. And then after somebody would roll, they were realizing, oh, wait a second. This is the exact direction that got us -€1,000, and somehow we got -€1,000 again. So I think it's just disrupting the flow of the conversation so that they keep making that same bad decision over and over and over again, which is what happened.
Yeah.
Like, they completely forgot how they earned the 100 or 200 euros at the start of the challenge, or even just keep things even. Um, yeah, it was just surprising that they didn't really take too much note of the proper throwing. But the other side of that could be that everyone wanted to look suspicious in this challenge and were going out of their way to make sure that people were screwing up, and everyone wanted to look suspicious, so they went along with the bad advice.
Well, good news for everybody then.
So yeah, Dennis wagers 200 euros on his throw and again gets -5 times. Rick wagers 200 and gets 1 time, salvaging at least some money. John wagers 100 euros and lands it in the 1 times as well. Vivian's last to go with 150 and goes to the middle, the most dangerous route. It then lands in the -3 times box, meaning they earn -2,650 euros of 8,000 euros to the pot. A good time had by all.
Mm.
And then Pieter Jan comes out and just says, hand it over, hand it over.
I know that this isn't a brilliant episode, but it is a great one for Pieter Jan just being an unbridled bellend to these people.
Well, pinball is a dangerous game.
He's so sarcastic with them, especially at the end of this challenge and especially at the execution.
It's interesting to note that Vidum doesn't really design challenges like this, where there was equal opportunity for them to earn 8,000 euros, but also to lose 8,000 euros in this challenge.
Yeah.
They really very rarely leave it up to this much chance or this much of a wide range of what the outcome could be.
Well, they very rarely offer 8,000 euros in a season now, so
they were just in these 2 challenges. They were offered 15,500 euros to put in the pot.
Yeah, I reckon 15.5 grand is probably the maximum between these two challenges alone.
Which it was very, very achievable here in these 2 challenges. And they still have quite a bit of money, even after losing all of that after rolling the balls down the hill.
Yeah, they still have 8 grand, something like that, after losing so much money on the pinball machine.
And then we still have the voting challenge where they're being given 250 euros to correctly predict who would go home. And I don't think it took a rocket scientist to figure out that Paula was likely going to go home next, which is what almost half the group figured out anyway.
My favourite bit, other than Sebastian's weird A's, is Frauke writing Paula's name down. She's so no nonsense about it. She's just like, yeah, it's Paula. She's going home.
Yeah.
She just doesn't give a shit.
I think my favorite bit about Frauke doing it is she stomps across that bridge with so much force that I'm surprised the bridge didn't break underneath her. And
also on the note of Carrick-a-Rede Bridge, it actually probably would break the modern day Vidum budget for them to do a challenge at Carrick-a-Rede because it's 16 quid a crossing now.
Oh, wow.
The tickets for Carrick-a-Rede, according to Google when I quickly checked where it was earlier, are £16 a person.
So they would only earn 220 euros roughly per correct guess.
Yeah.
And you have to pay to close the bridge for everybody else as well.
Yeah.
Which would have a surcharge of some sort, I would assume.
Yeah, even if it was, it would have only been for probably an hour or so, wouldn't it? But still.
I mean, it's just nice to have a bridge where the troll is at the start.
Yeah. Usually you've got Tico shouting from the bottom, can you throw me some shampoo, please?
Can you give me the mosquito repellent? You got mosquito repellent, right? Also, I really would like a guitar too. Actually, wait, no. Just give me the bottle of whiskey.
So Rick writes down Paula's name, as does Frauke, and John writes Dennis's name down. During the night, they get ample opportunity to interrogate each other in pairs, which we definitely need to see about 10 minutes of in this episode.
Yeah, when they went through the 3 challenges, I'm thinking, what's going to go on here? And, oh my god, this was a lot of nothing. It was as bad as the montage scenes we see in a finale of them recapping every challenge they did during the season. This was just... maybe we could have seen more of the dynamics of them trying to open the chest, or the discussion during the auction, which I know wouldn't have been that interesting either, but This was by far the least interesting thing to happen all episode, yet we spend 7-8 minutes on it. It felt like a while.
I know we love to praise the shorter run times of the earlier Vidum seasons as being a bit more efficient, but this episode's not efficient with its time.
Yeah.
It's so weird pacing-wise.
The problem is this is a 50-minute episode with challenges designed for a 30-minute episode.
Yeah.
This is a Mole New Zealand sort of episode.
That was going to be my next comment, damn it.
This is probably a Vidum Junior episode.
It's interesting to note that we have an execution twist, 3.5 challenges, and it feels like it could have been cut down to 40 minutes of running time.
Yeah.
Because with the way that these challenges were filmed, it's just very difficult to figure out what the mole did in these challenges, or even a specific strategy they could potentially implement.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to spoil too much about the Jordan part of the season, but, like, obviously Jordan is a lot better than Northern Ireland, otherwise we probably wouldn't be doing this season. But there is another challenge sort of in Jordan where they basically just interview their mole suspect. And I'm like, if you know you're doing that, you don't really need this as well.
Yeah.
Like, did production just think that, oh, after filming these 3 challenges, we don't think we have enough material, so let's have this scene too as a backup?
Oh, probably. And, like, the weird thing is, even though they have, like, the little discussions in pairs, we only really see, like, one person talking to the other person. It's not really like a dialogue. It's like, I suspect you. Okay, and then they move on to the next pair.
Inky Pinky Paula. That was like the only note I really have, and Dennis wearing a Grim Reaper shirt.
Did you spot probably the most dangerous bit of this episode as well? It came around this time in the episode.
No?
Something we don't normally see, and it might feed into something we talk about next week, actually. There's a brief scene of Sebastiaan smoking.
Oh.
But he's doing it while sat on a hay bale, which seems not a good idea to me.
No.
Maybe in the words of James Wallington, the hay bale was all wet.
But the other interesting thing is, I don't actually know how this would work from a health and safety point of view, because as you probably remember, Bindles, the smoking law came into effect in the UK in 2007 in all workplaces and in pubs and stuff. And that's why Big Brother 7 in the UK had the outdoor smoking area shaped like an ashtray, because that's out about a week before the smoking ban. So they enforced it from day one of Big Brother and made them sit in a humiliating, oversized ashtray as a result. But the reason they did that is because the Big Brother house is technically a workplace because they're earning money to be there. Technically, that field would have been a workplace because they were earning appearance fees to be on the show because it was filmed in the UK.
Yeah.
So technically, they probably shouldn't have certainly filmed Sebastiaan smoking there, if not allowed him to smoke there.
I think, while we're talking about, I guess, the Big Brother smoking laws, I think it's sort of, it's one of those things that I've always found, like, really interesting watching UK Big Brother, because, like, our version has basically always had those rules. But they were just like, okay, it's a workplace because you've got the camera operators and all of that sort of stuff, even though they're behind the windows. So no smoking anywhere. We'll give you nicotine patches and that's it. Because I think it's partly, can't smoke in the workplace, but also can't show it on TV. So that they're like, well, we're just not going to bother. We'll pay for everybody to quit smoking.
Well, Australian smoking laws have always been a bit further ahead of ours because you had blank packaging a long time before we did.
Yeah, usually it's Australia usually has the strongest non-smoking laws, and Canada's right behind.
Yeah. I must also point out, in case anyone's wondering, I don't smoke, but I used to work retail for 5.5 years. I know a lot of these rules. I started working in retail just as the blank packaging came in, and it was an absolute pain in the ass for us. And I used to wash my hands at the end of the shift, and just black water had come off. It was awful.
I love when customers come into work, and like that. Invariably, it's usually like Chinese tourists who don't speak English, so they sort of mime smoking.
Yeah.
And we're like, it's a wooden railway through the forest, and it's the middle of summer. We try not to start any fires.
Well, I can't remember whether I've told you guys this before, but the cruise that I did from Beijing to Singapore, that was the first one after going around China for about 2 or 3 months. And they actually had to deep clean the carpets because all the Chinese tourists were spitting on them before our cruise.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that was fun. So Anik says that she's sharing a tent with two lovely people with warm butts who are John and Paula. And they wake on day 7, but Sebastiaan says he didn't sleep at all because it was uncomfortable and something's happened that he wants to see everyone's reaction to. Turns out that €5,850 of the pot has disappeared from the pocket in the trousers that he left outside. He tries to give the remainder of the pot to Anik, but Vivian tells him as punishment he's got to still be Pennymeister.
You just lost a bunch more money, so as punishment, you have to hold on to the rest of the group's money.
Yeah.
What could go wrong there?
And then it's time for the test. 20 questions about the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows these goes home except for the mole who can never go home. And someone has a min pass frag for this test, but we won't find out who till the execution. Dennis is suspicious that Sebastiaan lost the cash, but it could be a move to make himself more suspicious. Sebastiaan says the mole won nothing in the pinball game. Paula says the mole bid money for something in the auction. Anik says that John's the mole, but she's still spreading between Rick and Sebastiaan as well. Vivian says the mole didn't open the first chest. John says Rick was weird with the chests, and Vivian chose a bad pattern in the pinball game. Frauke says the mole did lose money from the pot, and Rick has suspected Anik for a while as she doesn't bring much money in, but not many people have spotted it. Pieter Jan then sticks the knife in more by asking for a pot check. It should be €8,700, but it's actually only 2,850. And he asks if Sebastiaan did a good job as treasurer.
I love that, like, his entire reason for doing this is to just make fun of them for it because €6,000 is a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, like, it's an entire season's pot at this point.
Yes.
Imagine if this happened in Cambodia.
Well, I love how they also slightly stick the knife in by putting it in the test. One of the questions is, did the mole lose €5,850 out of his pocket?
I didn't notice that.
Because someone answers that question. I think it's the one that Frauke answers. There's a question specifically about whether the mole lost money out of their pocket. It's just such a dick move.
And then Sebastian's defense could have been, well, if we paid to get my luggage back, I would have worn different pants and maybe I wouldn't have lost it.
Yeah. And he also confirms that Paula had the most cards with 3, so she got the min pass frag and a €750 bounty on her head. And she gets the red screen immediately, meaning a total of €750 of 2,000 for the challenge, minus €2,250 of 17,500 for the episode, and €3,600 of 56,000 for the season so far. And she says that she didn't spread, but that had saved her the past few weeks, so she thought she was right. And he tells her to catch up on her sleep.
I don't think any sleep will help Paula be better at Vidum.
No.
Oh, and I love at the execution that Pieter Jan says, "Okay, Paula, you have the free answer on the quiz. Do you want us to have a look right away at your screen to see if you're the one executed? Yeah, okay. Boom, you gone.
She gone.
She gone. Pew pew pew. Bum bum bum."
And then confetti cannons go off, and the air horns. It's like,
you blew it.
He's like, well, obviously the group will be sad to lose you, but they do win some money, so maybe it's not all bad for them. He's like, they don't care, they just want money.
The banner's just unfurled saying, Paula, you suck.
And now, if there's any challenge involving a walkie-talkie with you gone, they'll probably earn even more money. And I like her montage. She doesn't get a very good montage. It's her. The first one is her on the walkie-talkie. The next one is her on struggling to use the walkie-talkie. Her inability to use the cell phone, or not the cell phone. It was failing to use the walkie-talkie, failing to use the payphone. Her going ta-da at the beginning that we referenced at the start of the season, and her ridiculous technique for rolling the ball down the hill. That's her whole montage.
I think we can all agree these last 4 episodes would have been much better if she actually was the mole.
Yeah. Yeah, Paula, I think we can say now, Bindles, both of us couldn't remember whether Hans or Paula went first.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure she's that much of a net loss for the season, being perfectly honest. She was there. She seemed nice.
I think she's a fun character, but she's a side character. Like, you can remove her from the season without changing anything. But it's nice to have her.
She's one of those contestants in competitive reality TV where Like her giving confessionals herself, she's not the most entertaining or engaging. But when everyone else has to react to her and give their commentary on her, that's where she really shines.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. Like, they're just making fun of her for not using the walkie-talkie, or that scene of, Paula, you figured out how to use the walkie-talkie now that the challenge is over. Huh. Screw you, Sebastiaan.
And I also must point out, I believe you suspected that she was going home last week.
Yes, I did.
This is a worryingly successful season for you, suspicion-wise.
Yeah. So €250 for you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've just been told somebody's stolen the €250 out of my pocket.
Yeah, why did I put the €250 in Sebastiaan's pants? Oh, how did it even get into his pants?
So, next time, there are snipers, Sebastiaan runs, and everyone cheers. I also love, Sworders next week is the transition to Jordan episode. Like, they did not show anything from Jordan in that preview.
No.
There is, I believe in the titles, there is one brief glimpse of a Jordan challenge, and that is it. They have not, at this point in Venom history, even alluded to the fact they're changing countries or going to Jordan specifically. To the point where usually when they're changing countries, Pieter Jan will say to them, oh, by the way, you can keep your passport because you might need it later. He didn't do that at the start of the season, so they think they're staying in Northern Ireland all season.
Yeah, because usually if there's a significant change in destination, they say, well, we're going to leave this area and go to such and such a province or such and such a country. But yeah, here it's just, I assumed based on the preview they had another round in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I think every scene from the Next Time trailer is from the first challenge and the only challenge remaining in Northern Ireland. I think there's one challenge remaining, and then it's one or two in Jordan before the execution.
2, because they do the hooker challenge next week and the board game challenge.
Yeah. I knew hooker was next week.
Yeah.
Because it's the one that I've been waiting years to talk about, because it's insane.
I know. It's basically like 90% of the reason we're doing this season.
It really is. 10% is Alex McMillan actually forgiving us when we finally do this season, given that they always talk about it being a historians, and you've got your wish, Alex, finally.
Yeah.
So, final few questions. Number 1, who's the sneaky Belgian? Number 2, who do you suspect? And number 3, who's going home next week?
Let's see if I can earn another €250. I think Mr. Bean's going to stick around a little bit longer. I think we're going to lose... we'll lose Sebastiaan next round.
Interesting.
I think Vivian's still the secret Flemish. And my suspect list is Annick, Fraukia, Sebastiaan, Rick, Vivian, Dennis, and then Mr. Bean.
Cool.
And I still think that the mole or production stealing money from Sebastian's pants, it was too high of a percentage to just steal.
Yeah.
Halfway into the season. So I feel like the mole or production really wanted to steal money from the treasure in the middle of the night, I feel like they could get away with it almost any night on any given season of Venom. I feel like if you're going to steal money from a player permanently, that it should happen like during a challenge or during the day. I think that like stealing it from them without any warning or any hint, like, you should really watch your money, like one of those hints, where they give you enough information to know that that there's some sort of secret night challenge. There's just no hint at all. I feel like it could just be like, what if it was when he was like giving a confessional that the money was stolen or something like that? I feel like it has to happen within like the confines of the game itself.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a very satisfying theft unless they explain it well during the reunion episode.
Yeah, the problem is I can't remember if there's any payoff to this at all.
No.
We'll find out.
But now Sebastiaan, he has no right to make fun of Paula, given Paula didn't lose 70% of the pot.
Yeah. Anything we want to say about this episode? About Paula, maybe? Have we eulogized her enough? Or
I feel like I gave my 2 cents on her.
Good.
Or 20 pence, I guess, if you want to be able to make a phone call.
Yeah, good point.
A quarter.
So, Thank you for listening to our Vista Mall 2009 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for an old mall in Northern Ireland and Jordan next week. Don't forget you can contact us on pretty much every social media platform that isn't TikTok, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us and contact at rtvwarriors.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors and get early access to the rest of the episodes of this season. Thank you as always to Marika for the subtitles, and we'll see you next week.
Jordan, that means we got to avoid having any prejudice towards Americans. Peace out and just chill till the next flavoring.
I've seen bigger balls in a field.